Wait, your hair is lighter and brighter than it was the last time I saw you. Looks fabulous. What did you do?
I use John Frieda Sheer Blonde Go Blonder collection. It amplifies your blonde and lets you go 2 shades lighter for bright, natural, sun-kissed blonde.
Wow, beauty secret revealed.
Let's just say hair talks.
With Sheer Blonde Go Blonder collection, your hair talks. Keep it light. Only from John Frieda.
Archangels, ghosts, and Bigfoot. Oh my. It's just another night for Supernatural Girls. Real stories, real answers to life's biggest supernatural mysteries. And now for another exciting interview with paranormal experts from this world and others. Here's your host, paranormal researcher Patricia Baker, on the one, the only Supernatural Girls.
Welcome, everyone, to another exciting episode of Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my co-host, Patricia Kirkman, PK, all the way from Tucson. How you doing, PK?
Absolutely fabulous. We are going to have a cool down tomorrow. I can't wait. It's been 90.
Oh, my God.
It's
90.
Crazy. Uh-huh.
Yikes. You know, it's going to be in the single digits here tonight, so.
Well, we're getting cooler tonight, and there's supposedly some rain coming in tomorrow, but it was just, the last 3 days have been heavenly. Just so beautiful. Even the 90 hasn't been bad because the breezes have been cool. It's just been perfect.
Oh, well, send it our way, would you please? We need it.
I'm selfish. I'm going to keep it.
Thanks a lot.
Well, maybe next week.
Okay, maybe next week. We'll wait for it. So in the meantime, let us know about these numbers. We've had one heck of a week here, and today, of course, that horrible terrorist attack in London near the Parliament, just a horrible event. So what's going on numerologically? Is there something that would have pointed us into that happening?
Well, one of the things is this month has been very disastrous for everybody. It's very difficult to deal with. 4s and 8s are always karmic. They have some karmic effect on us. We've been in a 4-month. This is an 8-day. The 8-day says, I want to be the authority. I'm going to do it my way, get out of my face. And that's exactly what happened with the guy in London. This has just been ridiculous. Everybody's holding a lot of angers. If you notice people, if you're in the grocery store, their shopping carts seem to get you in the heel or along the side as you're trying to make a bend. Everybody's in a hurry, and you can tell that they're very uptight. So thank God that at the end of today, that 8-4 accommodation is over with. But tomorrow, it's going to be kind of a wrap-up because there's going to be a lot of loose ends that we could fix up, take care of. But the nice part about it is that if you smile and pass it on, you can't give it away. It's just going to keep coming back at you. Everybody needs that uplift because this has been a very challenging month. And tomorrow, think about what you can do for somebody else to make their life a little bit better. And in the end, we make ours better.
Well, that is a nice thing to do. I know you've said that a lot the last few months. We need to be concerned about other people, not just ourselves, which is a good thing. But yeah, it's been pretty tumultuous. And then I've been watching, as we were discussing off the air, all of the new vaccine information that's coming out. And if you haven't heard our show from last week with Del Bigtree, highly recommend it. You can go to our archives at supernaturalgirls.com and go to the archives, and there is the show. And oh my God, what a blockbuster of a show that was.
Yes, it was. I had a few people call and they said, oh, they can't believe that I would go along with something like the vaccine situation. And I said, did you listen to the show? They said, well, we heard what the topic was. And I said, listen to the show. And I've had calls back afterwards saying they couldn't believe what they heard.
Yeah, I mean, again, there's just so much coming out now, and it's about time it did. I mean, there was just an article recently saying that when you have a vaccine and you're over 50 years old, it doesn't work very well. So, again, more and more is coming out, and people need to wake up. But can't thank Del enough for coming on the show last week. He was an amazing guest and had terrific information. And as he said, he's not anti-vaccine, and neither are we, but we are anti-contaminated vaccine. That's what we're talking about here.
Exactly.
So if you haven't heard the show, again, it's not anti-vaccine, but it's a real eye-opener. We highly recommend that show. And all of our shows, but that one that's your health, everybody. You got to take a strong look at that and see if this is what you want to subject yourself to in the future.
Well, we have to take our own health under consideration instead of just what we're told, because there's people out there that all they're looking for is the dollar amount and not your real health. So let's go for the good stuff and get somebody that really knows what they're talking about.
Well, let's find out, do these things work or not? Are they clean or are they dirty? We need to know. And so anyways, but that was a great show. And again, many thanks to Del Bigtree and all the people who did that wonderful movie, Vaxxed. Again, a real eye-opener. So, we've got an interesting story tonight, do we not?
Yes, we do.
Now, I want to give a shout-out here to Bob Luca, who is a dear, dear friend, and he gave me this case, which I had never heard of. I know you hadn't heard of it either. It's a kind of just been sitting there by itself in obscurity, and we intend to bring it out into the light. And again, thanks to Bob Luca for sending it to us. This is a fabulous case, and it's the Karl Higdon abduction, which took place on October 25th, 1974. Now, this abduction comes with a lot of physical proof, which is, again, extremely interesting to us. And it also kind of locks in to some of the Paulides work. Now, the Paulides work, as you know, is all about missing 411, the people that have gone missing in our national parks, and now he's taken it into urban areas, finding similar things happening there. And again, it's been a real experience to read about what happened to Karl. So anyways, he was an oil well driller, and he was out hunting elk when he encountered this extraterrestrial. Now, this case is on our Facebook page, and you got to go there and read it. It is mind-blowing. I mean, when this guy went to shoot at the elk, the bullet he watched it in slow motion because it must have hit one of the aliens' electromagnetic field generators, and the bullet turned inside out and just fell to the ground. And his wife was smart enough to grab that bullet when he finally did return home after hours of being missing. And she has the photographs today. She's going to come on our show. We're going to hear the whole story directly from her. Karl is still alive, God bless him. And so we are going to be hearing from them exactly what happened. But in the meantime, you really need to read this story. It's just jaw-dropping. And again, it ties in very much with the David Paulides work and where are these abducted people going? Who's taking them? I mean, we all want to know who is taking these people, who is flying away with them or taking them underground or doing whatever they're doing is just so wrong. And we are definitely not in an advantageous position when it comes to these kinds of things. Now, again, PK, with the police work, a lot of the people that they find 5 years later, whatever, they're dead. I mean, it's like, wait a second. They're doing a lot worse than just using people for a breeding program, if this is who's behind it. But as David has said, and we both, you and I, agree with him, they have a 100% success rate with what they're doing. They've never been caught. So here's my thing. I think that Karl has a key to this puzzle. And that's why we need to get them on the show, him and his wife, Marge, because there is some kind of key here that I think is going to point us in the direction of finally solving this incredibly horrific mystery that has plagued us, continues to plague us to this day. So again, it's the Karl Higdon story. It's on our Facebook page. It's called Hunted by Aliens. You need to read it. It is, again, it's a great read. It's a scary story. Thank God they returned Karl. And you'll see why. It's all in that article. So,
it's fantastic, people. You got to read it. You really do.
I know it is. It just blew my mind. And again, thank you very much, Bob, for sending it our way, because I never would have known about it. This thing has just been sitting there in obscurity. So Marge, Karl's wife, is completing her book. I think it is completed, and she's going to be putting it on Amazon fairly soon. We will let all of you know so you can read all the details of this incredible abduction story. Just remarkable. So, all right, well, tonight we've got another scary thing going on.
Yes, we do.
We're just scaring the heck out of ourselves, aren't we?
That is a fact. That is a fact.
And, well, we have Len Kasten, who's going to be joining us in a minute, and he is the author of a new book called Alien World Order: The Reptilian Plan to Divide and Conquer the Human Race. Now, this does not make me sleep well at night hearing about that.
No, it does not. That's for sure. Scary.
I know. Now, I hope Len will be unmuting himself in a second so that we'll be able to hear him, because I see his microphone is still off. Now it's on. Okay, so let me tell everybody a little bit more about Len. He is a UFO researcher and a freelance writer. He's a former member of the National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena and the Mutual UFO Network. He's a feature writer with more than 50 published articles in Atlantis, Rising, and New Dawn magazines, and he's also the author of The Secret History of Extraterrestrials and Secret Journey to Planet Serpo. So he comes to us also from Arizona tonight. So Len, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Patricia. Nice to be with you.
It's great to have you on, and I got to tell you, PK and I both went through your book, and it's a little terrifying, to put it mildly. I mean, it's got such an incredible history that you wrote about in your book. Now, what clued you in about this reptilian plan? What was it that turned your head in this direction?
Well, David Icke really opened the door for a lot of people, and as I started to research what he was talking about, even though a lot of it was fantastic, talking about the Queen of England, etc. But nevertheless, I realized that what he was talking about fits a lot of other problems and explains a lot of other problems. And that motivated me to continue to research the whole story. And then I realized it all opened up to me. But the one thing that really opened the door to me was discovering the book by Robert Morningsky, UFOs, Atlantis, and I can't remember the title of it. Anyway, it's a very obscure book. It was never really published, but I was able to get my hands on it, and that is the book that made the difference. Because he opened the whole thing up.
So you write about that history based on what he found, and he wrote about in his book. And again, this goes back so many years, but I mean, it's a lot for us to wrap our mind around. So what are the important points of this historical experience with these reptilians? What's important for us to know?
Before we proceed, I might tell you that I just watched a video of Linda Moulton Howe being interviewed for an hour and a half, and she came to exactly the same conclusion that I did.
No kidding! Oh, wonderful!
She discussed it in great detail with the interviewer. So it's getting out there, and the reason it's getting out there is because our consciousness is finally starting to expand, and that's the key. That's the key to the whole thing.
Definitely time.
And we all wanted to expand, those of us in the audience here tonight, and but at the same time, it's a little daunting to think about this reptilian plan, which in your book you say is to divide and conquer the human race. It doesn't sound good.
Well, it doesn't sound good, but they were here first. They were here long before we arrived. So they're not exactly newcomers. We're not dealing here with interlopers. We are the interlopers. That's the bottom line. And it's
we're the interlopers. But why haven't they come forward sooner? I mean, why are we thinking that we're top dog on the planet when we're really not?
They have still not come forward, as you would say. They haven't come forward. They're still staying in their hidden places because they know if they did truly come forward in physicality, we would be very, very, very disgusted by what we're seeing. So they know better than to appear in human in human society. They don't have to because they use their proteges, the Illuminati. And so it's the Illuminati that do the dirty work for them and have been for thousands of years. Well,
So
at least hundreds of years.
Pull the strings of the Illuminati. So explain to us how this works. They were here first. They pull the strings of the Illuminati. They make these puppets dance for them. How do they do all this?
Because the Illuminati are essentially hybrids themselves. They're part reptilian themselves. They have a large component of what are called blue bloods. They call them blue bloods because they have a high component of copper in their blood, and because they are part reptilian. And many of them who have a high percentage of reptilian blood, such as up to 45% or 50%, can actually shapeshift and appear human.
Oh, wow. That's scary.
Yeah,
Have you ever seen one of these reptilians up close?
No, and I hope I never have to, frankly.
Now, are all the reptilians from the same ilk, or are there different levels of reptilians, like there's different kinds of humans?
There are different levels. The top strata of the reptilians are the so-called Draco, who actually have wings. They actually have wings that they keep folded behind them. Then further down we get the reptoids themselves, the warriors. There's several levels of reptilian society. The Draco are the most fearsome, and they are the most cruel and sadistic, really. Then, of course, as we keep going down levels, we come to the Greys. The Greys are like little bellhops. They do the work of the reptilians, and they are the ones that are doing most of the abductions, as most people know about.
Yeah,
By the way, Bob Luca. I heard you talking about Bob Luca.
Yes.
He's Betty Luca's husband?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, I did an article on Betty Luca at one point, so I know the whole story there.
It's an amazing story, very well documented.
And I used to live in Connecticut, so I know them both quite well.
Yes, they're dear friends of ours, and we love them. They are great. They're coming out with a new book, by the way. Continuation of their experiences. That'll be out shortly. So in the meantime, with these reptilians, I mean, are they working for their own best interest, but not for ours at all?
Absolutely. Of course.
And the abductions that you mentioned briefly, what is up with this? I mean, it seemed like for a long time there were a lot of abductions. And then around the 80s, it seemed to come to an end.
I don't think it's come to an end. I think it's still continuing around the world, but it hasn't been as obvious and as evident as it used to be because they've scaled back. They've scaled back. There are millions of hybrids now all over the planet, which was their goal. Their goal was to create many, many hybrids, and they don't need a large component. They don't need more than 1% really to do what they need to do. So I think they've reached that number. And,
yeah, because it seems like the abductions, maybe there are less, I don't know, but it just seems like there's very few. It used to be quite a few stories coming out. Now there's very few stories. We hear older stories, like I just mentioned with Karl Higdon, but we don't hear very many that are new.
Well, you know, what they're into now, second and third generation hybrids. The book that I would strongly recommend that you read along these lines is the book called Walking Among Us by David Jacobs.
Oh, yes, we've read it. In fact, David's been on our show. And according to David, yeah, he said that their plan is to populate the world with these hybrids and basically take over. And they have no way of stopping them. I mean, that's what David has said. Their plan is so perfect. There's no way we're going to be able to stop them at all.
Correct. You know, David did endorse my book. It's in my book. Which copy do you have of my book? Do you have the printed copy or the galley proof?
We've got the printed copy, the real deal.
Yes.
We've got the real one.
David's endorsement is on the first page or the second page of the book.
Oh, yeah, we've got it. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And also
so
Michael Sala has also endorsed the book.
Yes, and he's been on with us as well on the show. But it's just such it's kind of a dire feeling. And hearing about this reptilian plan, and there's nothing we can do about it, and this is the way it's going to go. Now, let me just go back to the abduction issue, because in your book you do mention David Paulides' work and how he has sourced all of these cases of missing people, children and adults, that have gone missing from our national parks. And you seem to draw some type of connection there with this reptilian plan. What do you think's going on there?
Well, I drew the comparison with the book by H.G. Wells, The Time Machine. If you've read the introduction to my book,
Right.
Because that's exactly the scenario that he paints in the future, where the Morlocks, so-called Morlocks, live underground. They're ape-like creatures, and the beautiful people live in luxury and beauty above the ground. And then every so often they do batch consignments of the humans and bring them down to the underground, and they eat them. They drink their blood and they eat them. Well, that's essentially what's going on here. That's essentially what's going on here.
So you think the Morlocks are behind a lot of these missing children and adults?
I say the reptilians are. He called them the Morlocks. He made them looking like animals, but really the reptilians look more like alligators, really, humanoid alligators. In any case, it's the same idea, okay? And they prefer young people because their blood is their bodies are virtually unpolluted. They're not quite as poisoned as the adults, and that's why they like them better.
Ugh, gross.
I do not want to be a snap.
Well, the vampire stories throughout history, there's something to them. Nobody just.
Well, there really is. Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you.
Absolutely.
But again, it's just there's so much to be looked into when it comes to these missing people, children and adults, from the parks. And now David has gone and done more work with urban disappearances.
Right.
And it's so different from a typical abduction because, 5 years later they find the body's been dumped, or 2 years later they find a body that's been dumped. It's not the same as a Betty and Barney Hill abduction or a Betty Luca abduction. It's just not the same at all. There's no respect for the person that they take. It's just like they treat them like garbage and throw the body back out onto the planet, and who cares? That seems to be what's happening with those people.
Are any of these bodies drained of blood?
We've got to get David on the show to ask him that question. I know that the Elisa Lam case, they did say that her blood level was extremely low. They didn't know where her blood had gone. But she was the only one I heard about that was discussed like that. The other people, they just talked about having a hard time finding a cause of death. The person was clearly dead, but they didn't know what killed them. And a lot of times they'd find them floating in water. Water seems to have a big component with this.
Right, and I think the vast majority of them, the bodies do not turn up. They're just completely missing, and they stay missing. And that would be more in line with what's been going on with the reptilians, because they do kill the people, and they do eat the flesh, and they do drink the blood. And that's the story. It's very, very, very strange story, but it is true.
Now, the other thing about these people that are taken is that they're there 1 minute and they're gone the next. Is there a technology that the reptilians are using? Are they using portals? How are they doing this where they make such a quick exit that nobody can find them?
Well, to start with, the reptilians really exist in the fourth dimension, not the third. They're mostly at home in the fourth dimension. However, they can appear in the third dimension. And so really, they do most of their nasty work in the dreamscape, where they work on the astral forms of the dreamers. And when the dreamers awake in the morning, they don't really understand what's happened to them, but they're acting differently. But they're able to, that's the reason the abductees are able to be passed through walls and through windows, because they have the ability to accelerate the molecules and pass them through walls, because they really exist in the fourth dimension. They are fourth dimensional creatures, but they do also have a three-dimensional presence.
Well, here's a question for you, Len, from the chat room, and this is from Klaatu, who is asking, what is the climate on the reptilian home planet like?
You know, they come originally from Draco, the Draco star system. And Draco is a big star system with many planets. The main planet that they come from, I think, has a climate similar to ours, but I don't really know that to be true. But using Morning Sky's book about how they originated and where they originated, it does appear to be relatively similar to our climate. That's all I can tell you. But we don't know much about Draco. We have to go to the astronomers to get that information.
Okay, and how tall are these reptilians?
They could be as tall as the Draco themselves. Could be as tall as 8 to 9 feet tall.
Oh my God!
Maybe even taller.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
It's an imposing, scary presence when you're confronted with one of them.
Now, you've talked in the book about Dulcie. There was a big to-do that happened there. And we need to hear more about that because we've heard about this from other folks on the show. Everybody has their own take on what happened at Dulcie. But in your book, you talk about lots of different genetic experiments that are being done there and on humans and animals, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That information's been out for quite a while now. Phil Schneider talked about it, and there are several others. So probably the best source of that information was somebody named Thomas Costello, who managed to escape with photographs and copies of documents and all kinds of information about what's going on down there.
And there was a shootout at one point down there. What happened?
Well, they call them the Dulce Wars. There have been wars where some of the human collaborators eventually got fed up and disgusted with what they were dealing with and started to rebel against the horrors that are going on down there. And there was literally a shootout at one point, and many of them were killed. And some of the ones that were killed were some of our best scientific minds that were dealing with the reptilians underground at Dulce. And Dulce is only one of 130 different underground bases that they are connected with.
What's the purpose of all of this genetic experimentation? What are they trying to do with it? What's their end game?
Well, first of all, cloning is one of the goals. That they're also trying to create manageable humans that they can more or less use as robots, really. And so I think they're working on a way to come up with the optimal product. Many clones have already been. They know how to clone, and that's in the book. Have you read the first few chapters of my book?
Oh yeah, we've read the book, absolutely. But our audience has yet to get familiar with it, and that's why I'm asking all these questions, because I want the audience to also join in and to see that this is a very multifaceted subject that you've covered. It's not just history, but it's things that you've just mentioned that are going on even today that affect us. Because I know a lot of people, they think, oh, history, so what? That was then, this is now. But it is an important aspect. But you've gone into, from the history in your book, you've taken on a lot of these individual issues that are pretty horrifying. And we need to know about it. We need to know what's going on. A lot of this has been hidden from us, and it's so fantastical. A lot of people don't believe it.
I know that. I've encountered that myself. First of all, they are master geneticists. They really are some of the oldest inhabitants of our galaxy, and they've had spacefaring technology for thousands of years. And that's the reason why when they attacked Lyra, the Lyrans were totally unprepared for that invasion, and they slaughtered 50 million Lyrans. They destroyed 3 of their planets. The Lyrans were a very peace-loving human civilization. And so they are deceptive, and it's hard to believe that they could seek only to dominate and to kill, but that's all they're interested in.
Gosh, wow, this is really interesting, Len. Now, we're going to have to take a very short commercial break, and when we come back, we have a lot of questions for you about what we can do, and questions about, wait a second, don't we have choice? I mean, that's what we've been told over and over again on this planet, but I think we have less choice than we ever realized. So, again, everybody stay tuned. This is a very exciting subject. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone, to Supernatural Girls Radio. I'm your host, Patricia Baker, and I am here with my co-host, PK, and our guest tonight, Len Kasten, who is the author of a new book, Alien World Order, The Reptilian Plan to Divide and Conquer the Human Race. Well, we all need to hear more about this. So, Len, off the air, we were discussing a little bit more about the history of this, and that human beings have not been here all that long, but the reptilians have. So tell us more about all this.
Well, according to Stuart Swerdlow, who I used as an authority on this, and I think he had everything right, basically. The reptilians and the Atlanteans were in deadly warfare, because the Federation, which consists of 110 human planets or star systems, was behind the settlement of Atlantis. And they were the ones that confronted the reptilians on this planet, because it was really a battle for the solar system. Earth is the key to the solar system. And the Federation was not going to allow the reptilians to take over this solar system as they had done with 21 other star systems. And that's why they sent the Atlans here to confront them. And that's who forced them underground, where they still are. And then the Federation was forced into an agreement with them that rather than have the Atlanteans take over the planet, that couldn't happen because Atlantis went to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. So it was decided to create a new race here. And that new race is what we know of from the Bible as the Garden of Eden. And that was only about 40 or 50,000 years ago. I think it was actually 40,000 years ago. That's the race we now call Homo sapiens sapien, and that's the race to which we all belong. So we have, the way the deal was that we would continue to have reptilian DNA in our DNA, and that's why we have what we call the reptilian brain. And the reason for that is the reptilians wanted to make sure that they would be able to manipulate the new human race through the DNA, through the reptilian connection. So that's caused a lot of the contentiousness on this planet. But that's where we are. We are not Atlantean. We are not descendants of the Atlantean humans. We're a new race. And that's the race that the reptilians have been able to manipulate so easily. They couldn't manipulate the Atlanteans, but they can manipulate us. And they do it through the abductions, and they do it through many other techniques.
Now, what about the fact that we're supposed to have choice on this planet? There's a lot that's made of that we have choice. We don't have to do this, we don't have to do that, we have our own choice. But it doesn't sound like we have much choice when it comes to this.
The reptilians have been controlling us for thousands of years through their proteges, the Illuminati. The Illuminati own the banking system, they own the media, they own just about everything. They create the wars. So we really are enslaved essentially to the Illuminati. And we have been controlled by them for thousands of years. We literally have been slaves. Morning Sky said that they're here, they've always been here, they're hidden in plain sight, and they really own us. And they have controlled our civilization for a very long time. And at first they decided to try and use globalized religion. Then they decided to create world wars. They've done everything that we would consider not our doing. They have been behind it.
So how do you, as a human being that has revealed this to the world, how do you find a way to fight it? Is there a way to fight it?
Yeah, you do have a copy of my book there, right?
Right in front of me.
Okay, just turn to Appendix C. Path to Victory. That's the best I could do in terms of giving advice about what we have to do. And I got that information from an alien who is from the Procyon star system, and he wrote that. He wrote that, and he knows what he's talking about because he once lived in Procyon, and the Greys took over his planet by the same techniques that the reptilians are using to take over our planet. So he knows exactly what he's talking about. And all he's telling us to do is, if we can raise our consciousness just a little more, so that the 100th monkey phenomenon takes over. Once we've done that, they can no longer touch us at all. They can no longer manipulate us. They can no longer enslave us. They can no longer take over our finances, our lives, everything. We then are free. We then become free. That's the game.
So raising our consciousness, and I read this chapter, but again, it kind of left me like with not a really great plan, but some understanding of what a lot of the enlightened leaders have been saying for a long time, which is, again, raising our vibration, expanding our consciousness. And for a lot of people, I mean, you're talking about the truth. People are manipulated. People are under the thumb of a lot of rules and regulations, and they don't see a way out. They really don't. So finding a way to be enlightened, finding a way to raise consciousness sounds great. But it's not, in my mind, a real plan for most of the people on the planet. I mean, I think we have a small percentage that would be able to go for it. Right, PK? What do you think?
Well, I agree. I think people are very confused and frightened, so consequently they almost feel like they're afraid to make any steps for fear they'll be the wrong ones, and all they've done is compounded the problem.
Right. Exactly. So that's why...
a synonym for consciousness is awareness. It's an awareness game. As you become more aware of things, then you automatically seek knowledge along those lines. And the more you learn, through that expanded awareness, that's how you raise your consciousness. That's how it's done. It's not easy. It's not easy to do. But we now have, through the internet and through many other sources, we're getting a lot of help. We're getting a lot of help from our human civilizations on other star systems, the Pleiadians, the Andromedans, and several others.
Well, that was going to be my next question, is are there other civilizations in our universe or outside of our universe that are coming to our aid? Basically warriors of the light, who want us to be enlightened, who want us to come out of the darkness and not be under the reptilian spell.
Exactly.
And so what you're saying is that there are a number of races who are interested in putting some effort into that, which is nice to hear. Right, PK?
Absolutely, but they can't do it for us. They can't do it for us, but they are helping us. They're helping us in every way they know how.
Well, that's good, because it begins to feel a little overwhelming if there isn't some help coming from the other side. I mean, we've heard a lot of people on our show talk about the war in the heavens, that is going on, that is real, and then where do we sit in all of it? And, we agree. We have to take responsibility for our own enlightenment and our own awareness. All of that has to come from within us. And I think today, and I know PK, you'll agree with this too, we have more tools than we've ever had to be able to achieve that.
I agree totally. But look how easy it was for them to pit one nation against the other in the early 20th century and into the middle of the century, so that we would slaughter each other in huge numbers. Look how easy it was for them to do that, just by controlling one individual, like the Kaiser in World War I, and in World War II, Hirohito and Hitler. That's all they had to do. And because they were able to control those who were basically part reptilian, all of them, they could set millions and millions of people killing each other, slaughtering each other. That's how easy it's been for them to manipulate us. If we could get our consciousness just a couple of notches higher, that would be impossible. And even today, I think that's almost impossible to do.
That's the frightening part. When you take a look at the history in the back part of your book, that was absolutely amazing to go through this, to how these people can have this much power and to use it in the fashion that they did. And we're watching it happen all over again, and nobody's able to do anything to stop it.
Well, people are speaking out. People are seeing the handwriting on the wall. They're understanding what's going on because we've had that experience now in World War II. And we know exactly how they propagandize these things and how they manipulate people. And so
they're doing it right now.
They're doing it right now, but it's not going to be as easy this time. It's not going to be as easy this time because we've grown. We've grown a lot. A certain amount of sophistication has set in, and we've got certain tools that we've never had before. The internet, for instance, YouTube, they're fantastic. They're fantastic tools for spreading the word all around the globe. So
both positive and negative.
Both positive and negative, but nevertheless, we never had that capability before.
No, we never had the ability to really share knowledge amongst ourselves this way, this quickly, this completely. So yeah, it is wonderful. And then there's always that threat of censorship and surveillance and people watching us. But again, raising the consciousness is key. And staying out of fear. I mean, it sounds like one of their big games is just scaring the heck out of us.
Absolutely. They thrive on fear. In fact, they love the fearful energies that rise up to them from the human race. They literally feed on that. They feed on that fear. And if they can keep us in fear and anxiety and events that might come, then they stay in control. They stay in control. And
now,
it's really, yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Now, I'm just going to say in your book, you talk about Quetzalcoatl, and now that appeared in history to be and actually a pretty good leader for the people back then, but that was a reptilian leader.
I don't know if Quetzalcoatl was actually a reptilian. He may have been a hybrid. I don't know too much about that, to be honest. But I know that he was easily defeated by the Spanish, so I don't know what to say about that.
Yeah, it's a question for sure. But I wondered if there were any good reptilian leaders in the past, any of them that had heart and soul and integrity or not.
Well, I'll tell you what James Bartley says on the internet. The only good reptilian is a dead reptilian.
Oh, my.
And, yeah, that's exactly what he says. That's exactly what he says. And Bartley is a very, very, very knowledgeable source of how the reptilians operate in the dreamscape and through the lower astral realm. And I would recommend him highly, if you can, to look him up in Google and see what you can find out about what he's written so far.
Now I have a question here in the chat room from Debbie, who's asking, should we be worried about all of this?
You shouldn't be worried about anything. If they can keep you in fear, then they can control you. So worry and fear goes right into their playbook. That's what they try to do, and that's why they keep us in anxiety about world events, possibility of attack, possibility of war, possibility of a terrorist attack.
But in just basic numbers, it sounds like you're saying that there's so many of them over so few of us that will become enlightened.
Actually, no. We have the numbers. We have the numbers. We have 7 billion. They have perhaps maybe a few thousand. That's all. But they do have space travel, and they do have space ships, and they can go back and forth to Draco. So they could send down more troops if they want to. But the point is that right now, a relative handful of reptilians is controlling 7 billion humans on this planet. That's the story. That's what's going on.
Incredible. Incredible.
Yeah, it is. It is amazing. I tried to sketch out a likely scenario, and that scenario has to do with creating artificial intelligence. What they're doing now is focusing on creating robots, and when the robotic capabilities reach the point where they're just about equal to human, that's what they call the singularity. The singularity is when that equation is reached, and it's going to be harder to tell the humans from the robots. I don't know if you've all seen the movie Blade Runner. Have you seen Blade Runner?
Oh, yeah.
So, remember that if you remember in Blade Runner, the only way they could tell if a person was a robotic was by a certain eye test that they did. It was very complicated. Other than that, they were completely human looking. And I think that what's going to happen is...
Again, everybody stay tuned. This is a very exciting subject. We'll be right back. So welcome back, everybody. Thanks for tuning back in. And we are speaking tonight with Len Kasten, who's got a great new book out called Alien World Order, The Reptilian Plan to Divide and Conquer the Human Race. Now, Len, you were saying you wanted to get back to the subject of cancer. So let's go visit that again. What do you have to say to us about that?
Well, it's really a remarkable eventuality that after 50 years of so-called war on cancer, we haven't hardly made any progress at all. And we have some very sophisticated laboratories working on this. So, really, at this point, it has to come under the heading of conspiracy. And I think even in the early days, when they were talking about the fact that the Rockefellers controlled all the cancer treatment facilities, even in the very earliest days, the word conspiracy was mentioned, because it's really inconceivable that they haven't come up with a cure yet. Yeah. And the reason they haven't is because there's so much money in it. Chemo drugs alone not only enrich the doctor, but they tremendously enrich the pharmaceutical companies. It's a huge amount of money, billions, perhaps even trillions, I don't know. And so that's something we have to think about. Why is that? What's behind it?
And there are a lot of doctors who go a more natural route who say that there are, in fact, cures for cancer, but they're under the radar, that you really have to search for them.
Exactly. There's a clinic here in Phoenix called Euromed, EUROMED, that's having great success using only 10% of the chemo and supplementing it with insulin, because the insulin reduces the sugar to the point where it's almost starving the cancer cells. Then they mix the chemo with dextrose, and the cancer cells gobble up the dextrose, and they drink the Kool-Aid. They die.
Isn't that something?
Yes, that's pretty brilliant. Yes, that's great. But again, this is something that most people, if you hadn't even mentioned it on our show tonight, I'm sure a lot of people have never heard of this.
Yeah.
Right. It's called insulin potentiated chemotherapy, and I think it's spreading now. It's a good idea. It's a very good idea.
Yes, it is.
You think of the fact that we can put a man on the moon, we can do all things of that nature, and yet for all the people that have been working on drugs and fix cancer, that we've not come up with anything better than what we have. Incredible.
Yeah, exactly.
Interestingly enough, though, the major pharmaceutical companies that are benefiting from this are the of the German pharmaceutical companies. In fact, the only industrial building that remained untouched after we got through bombing Berlin was IG Farben. It was completely untouched to the point where our military moved into it and used it as a headquarters because not a single bomb had touched it. Now that can't be an accident.
Yeah, exactly.
No.
No,
Incredible.
That was no accident. So now we were also talking off the air when we were waiting to join our audience again tonight about mind control. There's a big play in mind control in all of this. So tell us more about what you know about this. How does it work? How do they do this to us?
The reptilians and the aliens control what they call the dreamscape, DREAMSK. They can literally program people from the lower astral while they're dreaming. And that's how they get large numbers of people prepared for war. They literally program them at night in the dreamscape. And that's why we get such horrible, sadistic things happening during war, because these people don't even know that they're controlled. And mind control is one of the major weapons, if you want to call it a weapon, of the reptilians and the Greys. They have that honed to a fine point. They know how to use it in terms of political terms. We call it propaganda, but it's still mind control. And the reptilians are masters of propaganda. And they used it very effectively in World War II, on both the German side and the Japanese side.
So there's more than one level to this mind control. There's the dreamscape that you've just described. And then there's also basic propaganda that we are pretty familiar with. Now, one of the good things that's happening, though, is people are getting wise to the lamestream media. They're not listening to it as much because they realize they're being lied to. So there's a positive change in the right direction.
Absolutely. I think that's great, and that's what I was talking about raising consciousness. I think that's part of what we're doing about raising consciousness. There's a good example. People are cutting the cord on their cable television now and being very selective about what they watch. So that's a good sign. Very good sign.
It is a good sign. And I think all of this has come to light in the last couple of years or so in a big way, which is great. So all of this trust in our institutions has come under fire so that we don't blindly, hopefully, trust them anymore. In fact, last week when we did our show on vaccines, and we had Del Bigtree talk about all of this.
Okay, clogged pores, I've had it. You think I don't notice your pesky blackheads? It's all I see. Why else would I be dodging photos, yelling back up, zoom out, not so close? But now, I've got Biore Deep Cleansing Charcoal Pore Strips. With natural charcoal, they pluck out stubborn dirt, oil, and even blackheads in just one strip. So go ahead, snap away. With Biore, I have finally found the skin of my dreams.
Biore, free your pores.
Information. That was one of the things that came up, is that people can choose whether to put their faith in the CDC and the doctors telling them to get a vaccine, or they can do their own research. They can ask for more research to be done that's real research on these vaccines, and are they clean or not. And so there are some choices there. People can come back to some sanity around this, because I know you also mentioned, Len, drugs. And people just blindly taking drugs, and it leads to needing other drugs to take care of the symptoms of the first drug.
Exactly. And I think almost most seniors are on a very, very large drug syndrome. They're all taking drugs. Once you reach the age of 65, it seems to be a given that you're going to be taking 4 or 5 different prescription drugs. And that's another instrument of control.
And what you're saying is really true. And I think a lot of the problem is with elderly people, they have been brought up with the belief system that doctor knows best. So they don't question their doctor. If their doctor hands them some medication, they're more likely to take it without, say, you and I, we would go to the internet. We'd look it up. Do we really need it? What are the side effects? Is there a natural way to go? But a lot of elderly people don't do that. They just take the meds.
They don't question it. They don't question it at all. The doctor is the authority, and they just do what he says. And the medical profession has done a lot of work building up this image of the doctor as a know-it-all, somebody who knows exactly. And it's a false image. It's a facade that is starting to develop holes, because more and more people are realizing that naturopathic techniques are much better.
Yes, well, they are. And so when people just blindly take all this medication and one leads to yet another medication, then you're saying that this is all part of the alien world order control plan.
Absolutely. And 1/3 of the people that take chemo die anyway. So the chemo actually kills them. So what's the point of this? What's the point? And even those that do get some perhaps relief for a few years with chemo, well, the cancer can come back very easily, and it does in many cases.
It does. And I've heard that there are, 15 people in the world that hold a patent on that? So that's 15 people that are getting quite wealthy from this.
Exactly.
And meanwhile, there are other, again, methods that fly under the radar. People want to investigate them and use them for their own health and wellness. Everybody's choice is different, but everybody should have a choice. And they shouldn't be made to feel badly if they're not going along with a traditional treatment. Right. I don't know if you remember, but Suzanne Summers, when she was diagnosed with cancer, and she talked about using mistletoe, and my God, I thought they were going to string her up in the town square when she was talking about that. Remember that?
Yeah.
There was this huge uproar about it.
I know, and that mistletoe technique does seem to work in many cases, so I've heard.
Yes, and let's face it, nothing is one size fits all. Everybody's different. No. Everybody's an individual, so you really need to be your own partner in your health. And that's also, again, okay, now we're talking about coming to consciousness. So that's another step in your program here, in your plan to victory, is not going along with what the status quo is saying. You really need to investigate for your own best interest, for your own health and wellness. It's across the board.
Exactly. That's what you have to do.
Are there other methods of mind control that are being used on us?
Well, for a long time, the psychiatric establishment was essentially implementing a form of mind control. That's sort of faded away now. A lot of people don't go to psychiatrists anymore, but and putting people in mental institutions and keeping them drugged, that's still happening. They may not have mental institutions anymore, but they are being controlled by drugs, by various types of things to keep them controllable. So, it's still going on.
Now, when we had Dahani Uwahu on the show, she was a Cherokee medicine woman. She has now gone into a more Buddhist outlook on life. But one of the things that she taught us is that when there is a thought that's truly your own, you can feel it like a wave. It comes from within, and it's this gentle rolling energy. When there is mind control being directed at you, or something or someone trying to plant thoughts in you, it comes at you in a jagged energy form from without, so that you can begin to feel the difference. And that was something she trained her students to learn how to recognize the difference. And again, that would be another good step for people to pay attention to that. Is this my thought? Did this come from me? Or is this something that's coming from outside of me that wants me to behave in a certain manner?
Absolutely. If you can learn to differentiate those two things, you'll be well on your way to getting rid of mind control. Absolutely. If you can do that.
And I think there's a lot to be said. Like, I know, PK, with your numerology, that's very enlightening also. So when somebody follows a path and comes to see you for have their numbers read, it gives you that self-awareness. It gives you that enlightenment. Here are my challenges. Here are my gifts. So that helps as well, right?
It gives them an opportunity to use their own resources instead of having to line up like sheep.
But don't forget about the extent of the distractions that they've created. The media, the entertainment industry, Hollywood, all of that is a form of mind control, all of it. And
Hollywood right now is ridiculous.
yeah, and not only that, but the games that they're giving the young people to play, shooting and killing, that's all part of it.
Yep.
Those are the popular games. Those are the games that are the most popular.
The scary part.
Yeah, it does. It makes a difference because you begin to think that that's the new normal.
Right,
you know,
exactly.
that killing people, even if it's just on a video game, when you do that over and over again, it becomes this repetitive motion. It becomes embedded in your psyche, and you begin to look at all of this as a more normal thing to do. So, yeah, I can see what you're saying there, Len. It's very dangerous, and people need to be aware of it. And we get it from all sides.
I know.
I mean, it's not just video games now. It's on television. It's all of this killing and shooting. And I mean, I was watching a very light show the other night, and I realized I felt so. I said to my husband that he makes fun of me for watching this one show called Scorpion, which is all about geniuses. But every once in a while, I like to watch something like that because it's light. It shows people using their brain power to accomplish something, and it's not, we're going to now shoot and kill everything on the screen. So
Well, we give such a false look for the children. They see somebody shot, the next day they see him on another show, so they don't think hurting somebody or pulling a trigger is going to actually take them away.
Exactly.
Right. Exactly.
That's a very good point.
It's very subtle. It's very subtle, but they're masters. They're masters of mind control. The reptilians are masters of mind control and propaganda. They've been developing it for thousands of years, so they know exactly what they're doing. And most of it is reached the point now where people don't realize it at all. What they think is normal is mind control. They're implanting certain ideas that you think are harmless, and they operate on your subconscious to the point where they keep you from making any progress spiritually at all. They just literally put a wet blanket on any spiritual development. They focus on that, and that's what they use a lot. They use that a lot.
Now, with the reptilian, just a few more questions. I'm getting some text questions in from people. Did they have a soul, the reptilian race?
All I can tell you about what Robert Morning Sky says about the reptilians is that they do not have a heart chakra like we do. They do not literally do not know how to love. There is no love in the reptilian race. There's only domination and control. So it's a totally different approach. To them, killing and controlling is second nature, whereas to us, it's really something we are basically ashamed of doing.
Right, we should be horrified by that. So, but they're not, because you're saying it's just a part of who they are.
It's a part of who they are. You can't even call it evil. It's just who they are, basically. And we are who we are.
Exactly, that we're just opposite of one another, period.
Yes, exactly. And everywhere that the reptilians have conquered a star system or a planetary body, the only thing they know how to do is to dominate and control that society. They do not try and make them peaceful partners in their empire. They simply control them, and they use them for whatever they can get. That's the way they are.
Now, here's another question from the text. It is, how long is their lifespan?
If you read the first part of my book, then you'll realize that the biologists and the geneticists among the reptilians have developed drugs that can extend their lives into the thousands of years. So they can transcend generations, our generations, and they can inculcate programs that last way beyond the normal lifespan of a generation on Earth. So that to us, it's something new. To them, it's a plan that they have put in motion 1,000 years ago. So that's something we have to keep in mind.
Exactly, because again, this person is writing in about this and asking, because even if their numbers are lower than ours, their lifespan is much longer than ours.
Right.
Definitely. Probably thousands of years. That's the scary part.
Yeah, that's right, because there's a lot of power in that. There's a lot of
That gives them a tremendous advantage, really.
It does. It really does. Now, here's another question somebody wants to know about. Have they ever been known to help people? Have they ever offered a hand in friendship or helped people to get well? I mean, since they have this technology that's so far advanced, have they ever tried to help us?
Well, there are several ufologists who do say that there are many good reptilians. I don't know if that's the case or not. Thinking about what's in their genes and their genetic structure, it would seem unlikely to me. But yet I've heard stories that there are certain breakaway reptilian groups that are trying to help us, and I don't have any information about that.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now, have you met anybody who has come face to face with a reptilian that can tell you exactly how it felt, what it was like?
Personally, no. But if you just all you got to do is put in the word reptilian on YouTube, and you'll get a lot of stories about that. You'll get plenty. So the information's out there now. It's on YouTube and it's on the internet.
Mm.
Now, with the Pleiadians and some of the other star people who are supposedly helping us, how do they handle the reptilians? I mean, they come face to face with them, I would imagine, and they try to strike a treaty with them. What do?
They cannot control the Pleiadians. The Pleiadians are way above them. Any race that has the concept of love or affection eventually reaches the point where they're much superior to the reptilian games, mind control, propaganda. They can't be controlled. And the reptilians are in that category. And the Pleiadians are in that category. And so are the Andromedans. But these are large star systems. These are not just one or two planets. The Pleiadians, I think there are 17 inhabited planets in the Pleiades, at least, and probably more in Andromeda. So it depends on individual. We're dealing with individual civilizations, but as a rule, the humans in Andromeda and Procyon and the Pleiades are far above control by the reptilians. And they have developed defensive technology also, so they cannot be invaded either.
Wow. So for us on the human plane here that are struggling with all of this mind control and all of what's coming at us from every different direction, what if we ask the Pleiadians to come personally help us? I mean, will they listen? Do they come? Do they respond like people claim angels do?
They do it through advice and influence, and the one that comes to mind, the most well-known would be Barbara Marciniak. Perhaps you know about Barbara. She channels the Pleiadians, and the channeling sessions that she does are really amazing in terms of advice and what to do and when to do it. I would recommend that highly. That if you can find one of those channeling sessions on YouTube and listen to the Pleiadians that come through Barbara, you can learn an awful lot. I think she and Barbara is Barbara Hand-Clow, is that who it is? Those are the two. Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. And I know you were going to mention some other leaders in the field and some books for people to source to get more information about all of this.
I would recommend, I do have a reading list in my book, but generally speaking, I would recommend the following writers on these subjects. Wes Penry, Penre. Anything you could find by him is good. Somebody named Branton, Branton. His real name is Bruce Allen DeWalton, but he goes by Branton. He is dead now, but anything you can get by him online or through Amazon, I would recommend. Anything by Alex Collier, I would strongly recommend. Alex Collier is connected to the Andromedans. Anything by Stuart Swerdlow, SWERDLOW. Stuart was actually part of the Montauk experiment, and he managed to free himself from that, so it's an amazing story.
That is an amazing story, yes.
Yeah, they took him when he was very young, and he somehow he survived. And he's written several books now, and I recommend him highly. James Bartley. James I think he's written one book, but his articles are great. Anything by James Bartley. So right now, those are the 5 I would recommend.
Okay, well, that's so helpful, Len. Thank you so much. I mean, this has been so enlightening to us. We had no idea who was pulling all these strings. We had some thoughts about it, but now we know. It's these beings behind it, and it's troubling, but we are not without
Not without
things,
friends. We have
that's
many
right.
friends.
It's things that we can do on our own and raising our consciousness to the point where we're not likely to be manipulated by this anymore. Well, what a relief that would be, right?
Oh, God, yes.
It will really be Star Trek. It will truly be Star Trek. Everything that was promised by Star Trek, we will be able to do.
Well, that's very hopeful because that's what Star Trek did. It gave everybody hope. It was a wonderful show. So, yeah, so we deserve hope. We deserve to have this work out.
And there's nothing to be afraid of. I would just repeat what Franklin Roosevelt said in 1941. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. That's as appropriate now as it ever was.
It really is. It's something to remember, something to live by. Well, Len, thank you so much for coming on the show tonight. Again, the book is Alien World Order, The Reptilian Plan to Divide and Conquer the Human Race. It's available on Amazon and in your bookstores. So be sure to pick up a copy, and everybody, we'll be back next week with another great show. I think we're talking about the Black-Eyed Kids next week, everybody. That's going to be a fun one. So hang tight, have a great week, and until next week, we will see you on the Blue Highway. Good night, everyone.
Good night.